Today on Country Pocket, we have Andrew Duhon. His new album is called Emerald Blue. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. The first track I want to talk about is the lead track, Promised Land. What does it mean to be a man without a country?
Yeah. Um, I think for me, that's partly about traveling. Yeah, I can remember before I ever crossed the ocean, before being abroad, I had a much different sense of what being an American meant to me, I think. And I think the more that I traveled, you get a sense of that idea. A resident of the world, so to speak. You find commonalities, even if the culture is different and educational, the humanity feels very much the same. So I think a man without a country, I think it's me bucking the idea that simply because we are born here, we must coincide with the American on our philosophy more so than someone who may have been born somewhere else and somehow is less similar to us. I'm trying to buck that idea, I think.
Yeah, I feel like being an American means two wildly different things right now, depending on who you ask.
Right.
And You know, I think people on both sides are finding out that they probably have a lot more in common with someone in another country who thinks the way they do than maybe their own neighbor.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that way, and I would like to hope that though we seem to at times weaponize our patriotism or our identity as Americans, we can learn the hard way that we're all the same, or we can speak to each other in hopes of listening and understanding, and maybe we could learn a little easier than the hard way.
What are like some of the places where you feel like you really picked up on, oh my goodness, I am just like this person, even
Mm.
though the culture is so different.
I mean, the first place that I went was the UK, and that was easy, right? That's 101. But Sri Lanka is a good example of a place that I had a great opportunity because my great uncle was actually a missionary priest out there. Spent his entire life. He passed away a couple of years ago out there, but since age 21, he's been a missionary priest out there. And frankly, I didn't know how much I'd have in common with him, being that he had spent his life this way. And I wondered how I'd feel about that. My great uncle, who was kind of shipped out by the priesthood to live a life completely apart from his family. Um, but what I learned in that moment is I recognized his own lineage to me in his go get itness. He created an engineering facility there, which simply meant we don't need to buy some of this stuff that's costing us a lot of money from China. Maybe we can make it ourselves. Sort of that ingenuity that I recognize in my mother's side of the family. Uh, so not just in him, though. It was, of course, in the Sri Lankans and the way that we could relate to each other and had fun together and explored. And for them to show me, their little piece of the world was really special.
What do you think you can get, I guess, being a musician who goes into these ordinary communities and sort of has a good time with the locals instead of being the typical American tourist who goes overseas and, maybe looks at the Eiffel Tower or something like that?
I think without a doubt, the element of trying to be as honest as possible. That's Marty, by the way, and finding showing up these songs that are honest and a more intimate piece of me than the average tourist is able to share. That's a pretty special place to start from, whether it be in Birmingham, Alabama, or Birmingham, UK, you start from a place of deeper honesty in that you're sharing those songs. So I think I'm lucky to get off of a stage, go hang at the pub, and talk to folks who feel like I've taken the first step to get into or get past the small talk. Let's talk about, real things. Let's connect. And I love that element of touring and sharing these songs.
While we're still on the topic of internationalism, um, that hat you got on, Cuban boat lift. What's the
Yeah.
significance of that?
You know, I found it. I actually found it with a buddy here in New Orleans at a thrift shop, more or less, sort of consignment thrift shop. I saw it. Well, he saw it first, and he said, "Oh, I like this hat." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. That's my hat. I know that's my hat." And I had to do some convincing. Actually, I had to buy it from him later, but I put it on, and I felt like Ernest Hemingway, so I had to have it. But in terms of the actual historical significance, apparently there was a large group of boats that left Cuba for Miami, I imagine. That was the Cuban boat lift. So that's as much as I know about it. And there's a lot of different messages we end up donning, be it a brand or sports team or whatever. And so this one feels as significant as any other, I suppose, personally.
Yeah, a bunch of people making their way towards freedom.
That's
Can't
right.
really, can't really top that with a sports team.
That's right. Yeah.
Um, Moving on to the next song, "Slow Down." Um, you describe this world that we're living in as everyone wanting just a little bit more, something out of reach. Um, why are people always going for that?
Oh man. I mean, why are we always going for more? I think because we have dopamine receptors that have convinced us that what we need is another hit, and but we have also, you know, the ability to think past that and recognize our own mechanisms, our own chemistry that might want that extra hit are, a fairly base element of who we can be, who we can transcend to in our minds and in our living day to day. So slow down is about trying to find the joy within the peace of slower motion uh, day to day. For me, it's an incredibly difficult thing. And to this day, I have not voluntarily slowed down, certainly not in the way that was imperative during the quarantine. I am so thankful that I had that opportunity, but it was thrust upon me. I did not choose it. That said, it was a proof of concept. I certainly wrote a bunch of songs and learned about the things that are in my routine that are serving me, that and then other things that I wouldn't have given up voluntarily, but I learned after having to give them up, how they may or may not be useful to certain degrees. So um, my hope is to find that higher self that knows how to choose to slow down, um, choose to walk some land and enjoy that, as opposed to trying to beat the pavement constantly, uh, pursuing my own ambitions as a songwriter. I think both can exist, both can be true, but there has to be a balance, and slowing down is the part that I need to focus on cultivating.
Think you'll get there?
I think this record to me is about partly about the prospecting of where there physically is, because it's not in New Orleans for me. There is a manifesting vision of somewhere else, a bilocation likely, where New Orleans exists as a winter and a fall into spring, and then I want to go somewhere else. I don't want to spend summer here. It's hot. Uh, but there is a different terrain. There's a different flora and fauna in my mind. And it could be in the Northeast, it could be in the Pacific Northwest. It's northward. Um, and yeah, I do think I'll get there. I think it's becoming more and more real. It's the cabin in my mind that I talk about in Down from the Mountain. Um, and I think I'm closer than it's becoming more real to me.
Well, the property values on Long Island are maybe not so that you would want to have a second house here, but
Yeah.
in terms of the summer, it is nice because you have the water on both sides. So, even on the hot days, you'll get somewhat of a cross breeze.
Yeah, upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine. I think all of those places on this last tour while promoting Emerald Blue, I hadn't driven through the mountains of Vermont before. That was lovely, and certainly got me thinking, the Northeast has my attention, though the title track, Emerald Blue, is certainly about the Pacific Northwest.
All right. When did it strike you to actually slow down? The song "Slow Down."
Hmm. Almost within its inception, there is that idea of, oh, well, maybe I can actually slow down the tempo of the song somewhere. And, I considered making it happen for every chorus. Maybe once we get to the chorus, it slows down. Well, you try that and then you realize, well, now you can't really pick it back up. That feels a little funny. And then you'd have to sing the second verse slowed down too. Well, that takes too long. So in the end, it ended up just being that last chorus, which leads into kind of a lovely sort of half verse of the picture of what slowing down could be like. I want to sit with you on a porch swing. I want to see people see who passes by because this life will pass us by, right? So you know you have these ideas for what a song could do, and a lot of them don't work. Maybe it's too on the nose, maybe it feels a little cheesy or contrived, but that one worked. That one feels great to me. It's still one of my favorite moments, and certainly one of my favorite moments on this record.
Well, I do enjoy a good slow jam. Let's listen to "Slow Down" and we'll be right back. Andrew Duhon, Emerald Blue.